Hello, I'm Sally Owen, the Progress Leader for Years 10 and 11. I'm hoping that I am quite familiar to you now following my virtual assemblies and parent videos during the lockdown period. I wanted to make this video for you in place of a normal information evening that we would have held at this time of year, very similar to the one we held at the start of Year 10. So it's just to kind of recap some of that information that I gave you last year, but also to talk through the year ahead, particularly mock and real exams, and of course some of the all-important changes that are being made to subject specifications in light of the recent 6-month lockdown. So first of all, just to talk you through the kind of timeline of the year with regards to the mock and real exams. We will be holding mock exams. We usually had those at the end of Year 10 as well as in Year 11, and of course the Year 10 ones couldn't go ahead this year. The mock exams for Year 11 will take place in January, and the reason that we've decided to delay until January is to give students a chance to settle back into school and to also start to do some of the catch-up and plug some of those gaps that might be showing as missing information for when they were learning at home. We felt that putting them into mock exams earlier on in the year, which would have normally happened during November, just wouldn't have been fair and would have put on unnecessary pressure. So we've delayed them to January to give them a chance to rehabilitate back into school life and to give them enough time to prepare their revision in terms of that. Some subjects have a practical element to their examination process, and so for any of those subjects, those practical exams will start immediately when we return from the Christmas break. All the other mock exams, the written exams that will take place in the sports hall, will commence the week after, that's the week commencing the 11th of January. And then we will be reporting to students and to you at home their mock exam results at the beginning of February, once the staff have marked and moderated those grades. Of course then, at the end of Year 11 we have the main GCSE examination period, and unfortunately at this moment in time I can't confirm when that will begin. The exam boards are working together with Ofqual to decide when the examination period will start, and unfortunately they haven't clarified that to us just yet. Of course we'll let you know as soon as we do. During the examination period, there is always a contingency day that is set by the JCQ. This is a day that is put aside at the end of the examination period, so that if there was ever an unlikely event that stopped an examination going forward across the country, the contingency day would be used, and that's when the exam would be rescheduled for. At the moment, that has been scheduled for the 29th of June. And so we are requesting that all students are available and therefore not on holiday somewhere on the 29th of June, just in case something happens where an exam needs to be delayed. As I say, that's at the moment that date is scheduled. That may change if the examination period is delayed or extended for any reason. Similarly, results day is scheduled for the 26th of August, but again that might change if exams go on for longer this summer, because there'll obviously then need to be more time for the exam boards to mark and standardise their work before they give the results. So I'm going to move on now to talk about the mock exams that are coming up, as well as the real exams, and some of the important information that it's important that you understand, but most importantly that our students understand before they sit their exams. Of course, I'll be going through this with them through a virtual assembly and reminders throughout the year, but it's important that you know this information too. All of the information regarding exam regulations will be sent to students in the form of a student handbook. This will be emailed to them, and it's theirs there to keep and to read and understand, and it contains all the information that they need in terms of regulations and for what happens if on the exam day. When it gets to their mock exam period and the real exams later this year, we also have their timetables on Insight. There is a particular area on Insight that is for assessments and exams, and their timetables will appear there. It's really important that they check those timetables and understand them well in advance of needing to arrive at an exam. They need to check that all of their subjects are listed, and if it's a subject where there are tiers of entry, so foundation and higher, that they have been entered for the correct tier. Also on that timetable, as well as the dates and times of the exams, there is their seat number. This will correspond to the seats in the examination hall, and these will be different for each exam depending on the numbers of students sitting that exam. Therefore, it's really important that they check that seat number before they arrive to each exam so that they can go straight into the exam, take their seat, without there being any unnecessary movement around. Sometimes in the summer examination period, there are clashes where two exams are scheduled at the same time. We don't decide the exam dates and times, that's all done by the exam boards, and unfortunately it is therefore out of our control to stop this from happening. If there is a clash, this will appear on the timetable on Insight, and it will show that one exam will take place at the time that it's scheduled for everyone across the country, and the second exam will take place shortly afterwards. In this event, students will sit at one exam one after the other, and in the interim they will have a short break where they will be supervised by a member of staff. This means that they can have a break, they can go to the toilet, they can eat and drink something, they can do some last-minute revision if they require, but they are supervised so that they can't discuss the exam with the students who have just sat it and left the exam hall. They have to be supervised during that time. If this is the case for any students and they aren't sure about how to handle that situation, they of course can talk to me or our exams officer, Mrs. Williams, and we'll be happy to help. So, exam regulations. These will become really familiar to our students once they've gone through the mock exam period. First of all, mobile phones, of course, have to be handed in during the exam. They can't even be kept on their person even if they're switched off, because we can't guarantee that something hasn't taken place in terms of cheating. So they can be handed in at the start and they'll be handed back at the end. This also applies to any other web-enabled devices, for example, smartwatches, iPods, tablets of any kind. Again, they need to be handed in and collected at the end. We also need to make sure that there are no labels on drinks bottles and that there are only clear pencil cases brought to the exam. It's important to note that the exam conditions, in terms of sitting in silence, apply from the moment that students enter the hall until they have left the hall. So even when exam papers have been collected in, they can't turn around and have a chat with their peers next to them. They need to stay in silence until they have fully left the examination area. This is because there are often other exams still continuing, or students who have extra time in exams will still be working. And so we need to maintain the regulations of the exam hall at all times. I hope that this wouldn't happen, but in case there was an incident of this, I want to raise inappropriate and offensive material being written or drawn in an exam. If a student were to do this, the marker of the exam has the right to give them 0 marks, despite the work that they may have done for the exam. So it's really important that students maintain their professionalism when they're writing in their exam booklets. All exam materials will be sent to the examiner, including any rough paper that's been used for notes, or things like tracing paper that are sometimes used for maths examinations. Therefore, it's really important that they also make sure they don't write anything offensive on those things, because they will be sent along with their exams. Something that has come to light more in recent years is communication about exams on social media. What we need to make clear to our students is that this can result in a case of malpractice, and that if they have communicated any information about exams prior to an exam, they may be jeopardising their marks, not just for that one exam, but for all of their exams. This includes if they have possessed any information related to the assessment and have communicated this to anyone else. This includes if they have been sent some information that is classified and have failed to report it. If there was such an incident of that, they must report it to the school immediately. As I say, this could result in quite serious penalties. They could receive a warning, they could lose their marks for that exam, they could be disqualified from that particular subject, or they could be disqualified from all subjects in that examination series. Some of these subjects that your children may be studying still have a coursework element, and so there are other regulations that are applying to these subjects. First of all, plagiarism is really important that they understand what this is and what the implications are. At no point can they copy from anyone else, whether that be somebody in their class or outside of their class. And this also includes exemplar work that may have been shown to them previously by their teacher, or things from other resources such as textbooks. Everything that they include must be their own work, or in some cases, it needs to be referenced in terms of where that information has been come from. This also includes any access to online essay banks. It's really easy now for the exam boards to spot plagiarism simply by scanning in work, so they cannot purchase or find essays online and pass them off as their own. Also, this applies to them sharing their work with somebody else. If they have willingly given their work to another student who has then plagiarised with it, then that student is also then at risk of having their marks jeopardised. Again, the penalties are similar to the exam regulations. It may be that they just get 0 marks for that piece of work, or they could be disqualified from the subject or all subjects, depending on the severity of the incident. If your child is completing coursework for a subject, they will be required to sign an authentication form. This tells the exam board that they have agreed that all of the work that they are submitting is their work and their work alone. Some contingency plans in terms of what happens on the exam day. We know that things can sometimes go wrong and things happen that are out of our control. If your child is ill on the day of an exam and cannot physically attend the examination, they can apply for special consideration. But we do need to have evidence from a doctor that confirms that they were unwell enough not to be able to attend the exam. If they are well enough to attend at all, then it is really important that they still come to school and attempt the exam, because then we can put other things in place in terms of their marks. Moving on to this year, we will of course be reporting home to you about progress through our report indicators and also working at grades. Like I explained at the beginning of last year, we don't set target grades, but we do report how your child is getting on at that moment in time. So all working at grades and mock grades will show where your child is at that moment, and is not a prediction of how they might perform in the summer examinations or what their real results might look like. The reason for this is that it's an imperfect science. We cannot possibly predict how much progress they might make from now until the exams, or how they'll perform on that particular day with that particular exam paper. I'm just going to recap now some of the information that I gave to you last year with regards to revision and how to help students organise their revision, because this will be really important in the coming months ready for the mock exams. I will be presenting all of this information to them via virtual assemblies, and they will be set a whole year group homework from me to prepare their initial revision schedules, and these will be checked by their tutors. This is so that we can make sure that they are prepared and give them extra support if they're struggling to do this, so that they are prepared for the summer examinations where they'll be doing this alone at home during study leave. So some top tips for revision. First of all, it's never too early to start revising, and they should be revising right now. They have lots of information that they already learnt last year, despite what happened during lockdown, and ongoing through this year. If they continue to revise that as they go along, it's then not such a big task when it gets to the end of the year and they are on study leave. They should also limit their time in terms of their revision. They shouldn't be blocking out full days, for example, at the weekend to revise a certain subject. They need to revise in short bursts and change the subject each time so that they are able to retain the information better. It's really important that they are revising the information that they don't know, that they don't remember. There's no point continuing to revise the information that's already stuck in our minds. And so some of the techniques that I'll be talking to them about help them to discern What do I know? What don't I know? And then focus on that information. It's really important that they have a space at home that they can study in. This may be in their bedroom where they have a dedicated desk or area, or it may be another room of the house that they study in when they're working from home. In this area, it's important that it's clear from distractions, and it may be helpful for them to give their phones, Xboxes, computers, etc. to you when they're going to sit down to do their schoolwork. It's also helpful if they have a clear revision space to use when they're working from home. This may be in their bedroom where they have a desk set up, or it may be a different room in the house. It's important that there are no distractions here, so a clear desk space that's clear of clutter, and also no distractions such as phones, TVs and Xbox devices. It may be important that you take these things from them when they're going to do revision if they struggle to manage this themselves. It's also important that they accept that revision isn't a one-time job. They won't revise once and have everything memorised. It's an ongoing process, which is why we advise that they start early so that it's more manageable. So I'm just going to recap some of the ways not to revise. These are proven to not be very effective, and hopefully students won't get into the habits of using these ways of revising. So just reading and highlighting or condensing notes is not conducive to remembering information. As I've said, we also need to make sure we're not revising the things that we already can remember and not revising for a really long stint of time. It's important that they have regular breaks to allow their brain to absorb the information. So what does work? Regular testing is really important. And I don't mean this as in school sitting a mock exam. I mean this as them testing themselves or getting somebody at home to test them, to test their memory. That's what revision is for. They can do this by using online resources, for example, Quizlet or Kahoots, or they can do this in other ways, for example, completing tests that they may have done in class again at home to see if they can improve their memory, or using things such as flashcards. Also, when they're making their revision notes, they need to think about the way that they are presenting them, and visual aids are much more helpful in getting the brain to remember the information. So things like mind maps, infographics and tables can be really helpful. Creating a revision timetable is maybe one of the most difficult jobs, which is why we're going to help teach our students to do this. They need to spread out their revision over a period of time and, most importantly, be realistic about how much they can achieve. We don't want them to drop everything in their lives to only focus on their schoolwork. It's important that they have a work-life balance, and so they can schedule in times where they can't do revision onto their revision schedule. They can then look at the times where they can revise and focus in on the subjects where they need to revise the most. If they're using the flashcard method, for example, the Leader method, which I talked through last year, they need to do that every day in order for the method to be effective. This should only be for a short time, 10, maybe 15 minutes, but they need to schedule that in regularly in order for it to have the impact they desire. They then need to think about their time limits. Short bursts, only focusing on maybe one topic at a time, rather than trying to cover all content for that subject. And not having a limit on how long it takes them. If it takes them 10 minutes, then no problem. Sometimes it might take 20. But rather than watching the clock, they need to be focusing on the revision and the topic that they're looking at. They should also build in time to review what they've revised. So in a week, if they've revised one topic, they should then come back to that topic and do some form of testing to see what they can now remember. So how can you help at home? Firstly, when I set this homework about creating their revision schedule, it'll be really helpful if you could help them out with that and support them in creating that. And then helping them to stick to it. Some students are really good at organising themselves, but they're not actually following through with the revision that they've said they will do. If you can spend some time with them to test them or help them with their revision, that's really effective. And trying to make sure that they're using the right techniques and nothing from the what not to do list that I've suggested here. Again, if you could set up a dedicated space for them if there isn't one already, that would be really helpful to them. And you may be interested in purchasing some revision guides, which I'm going to talk you through in a moment. So now on the screen there is just a reminder of which exam boards each subject takes for your child. and how much of the qualification is based on a written examination at the end of year 11. That's why this revision is so important. Most of the exams now are focused on examination only, where they have to remember 2 years worth of information. So getting this revision right and starting it now is really important. You can use this information if purchasing revision guides, because we need to make sure that they are specific to the exam board that we are using. This is because different exam boards put different things on their exams. For example, in science, there are multiple exams covering the 3 disciplines of biology, chemistry and physics, and there are different topics assessed in each exam. These will be numbered and they will be different in each of the exam boards. And so if we are using the wrong revision materials, we may revise the wrong information for the wrong exam. So please just double check with this information or ask your child to check with their teacher before purchasing revision guides. So there are some revision guides that I recommended last year. One are the Tim Foote Study Skills Guides. These are really cheap but really effective. So I really do advise those. There's one for parents and how you can help, and then there's one for students about general revision tips. Another company that we often recommend are CPG. Again, they have a general how to revise book, and then they have subject specific and exam board specific books for most subjects. It might just be worth checking with subject teachers for subject specific exam guides, because they might recommend a different brand. Of course, we're wanting to support our students while they're in school, and we appreciate that, of course, the lockdown period has made lots of them a bit more anxious than they normally would have been in terms of their mock and real exams. Please, please, please let us know if your child is struggling. We want to help and we can help, but we can only do that if we know about it. The first port of call should be your child's tutor. They see your child every day and they have the big picture about your child's life. Of course, then we also have the pastoral managers for any pastoral issues, and myself for any academic issues that go across the board. For any subject-specific information, please contact your child's teacher. What's going to follow now are some further videos from English, maths and languages, and then some slides that show you the changes that have been made to each specification for each subject. These will of course be communicated to students in lessons and at pertinent times during the remainder of this year, so they are clear on what is and isn't expected of them in terms of their examinations and assessments. You can pause the video on the subjects that your child are studying so you can have a good read. And if you do have any questions, please direct them to your child's teacher in the first instance, as they will have the necessary detail in order to help you. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that I might be able to see you later this year.